This is the CitizenLink Report.
If you find our insights helpful, would you support our video efforts? Your gift of $25 or more goes a long ways. Covers the crew, lights, cameras, all that. Just click on Donate. Thanks from all of us. Could social conservatives accomplish more if we identified some common ground with libertarians? This is the CitizenLink Report. I'm Stuart Shepard, along with our Executive Director, Tom Minnery. Hi, Tom.
Hello, Stuart.
Tom, we've got coming up shortly here, a little later this month, the regional CPAC event. It'll be held in St. Louis, Missouri on September 28th. You've been putting together a panel that will open up a bit of a dialogue between social conservatives and libertarians. Tell us what it's about.
I have, well, first of all, Stuart, most people probably know that CPAC is the big conservative conference, meets every year in Washington. It's been so popular. They've started doing regional meetings, and this year one of those is in St. Louis at the end of September. And I have wanted for some time to present a panel discussion on the differences between conservatism and libertarianism, because we have seen, you've been there, we have seen the libertarian influence rising at these conservative conferences, and it's a lot different. That what libertarians believe is a lot different than what we as social conservatives believe on a lot of issues, and it's my hope to tease out those differences, talk about whether we might bridge the gaps, but if the audience understands the differences, that will be a step forward.
What's your goal for this? I mean, what's that step forward that you'd like to see?
Well, if I could get the audience to realize, yes, wow, I did not know that libertarians believed that. I did not know that social conservatives really believe that. And really it goes back, the differences go back to really the founding of the country, because the founding fathers thought that virtue, goodness, right acting, stemming from biblical principles were very foundational to this country. Libertarians, on the other hand, want to claim the rights that emanate from virtue and the founding without the obligations of religion, although some are religious, without a man being beholden to other people. The national platform for the Libertarian Party is really a barren landscape. Well, if you look in it for any of the references to godly virtues that are in our founding documents, and I'm not sure you can get from here to there. In other words, you cannot claim all of the rights and the benefits of freedom without acknowledging the obligations of virtue and morality.
Now, as you've been thinking about this, you've been talking about differences between the two. What are some of the key differences when it comes to policy issues between social conservatives and libertarians?
Well, for example, libertarians in their platform say, we favor the repeal of all laws creating so-called crimes without victims, such as the use of drugs for medicinal or recreational purposes. So, hey, free drugs for everybody for whatever purpose. That's pretty astonishing, and you can see why in what used to be a conservative state like Colorado with a heavy libertarian influence, we have passed recreational marijuana laws. Let's see, another big one is this. Government does not have the authority to define, license, or restrict personal relationships. Consenting adults should be free to choose their own sexual practices and personal relationships. There goes sexuality within the bounds of marriage. And if I could get libertarians to think about one thing, it would be this. Think about whether free sex, and that's really what this is all about, means bigger government or smaller government. Of course, libertarians really want government restricted and made much, much smaller. But when you say there are no boundaries for sexuality, you are saying children are going to be born into this world without the boundaries of marriage. who's going to take care of those children if adults decide they don't want their relationships any longer that created those children? Well, somebody's going to have to take care of them, and that's social services, of course. So that means more money for more social welfare benefits for children, more homes for foster care, more social service workers. It will be an increase in government, and I don't think they have connected those dots.
Are there issues where we can find common ground? Are there some things where we could come together and accomplish and move the ball forward?
Well, I think the president actually is bringing a lot of people on the conservative side together. There's a huge opposition to, has been a huge opposition to the military move against Syria for many reasons. People are opposed to that for many particular reasons. Libertarians are opposed to all foreign entanglements, as they call it, and that gives rise to another question, and that is this: libertarians would have us bristling with armaments designed for defense at the border only. But we're not doing anything overseas. We're not building alliances. We're not sort of building a coalition against the bullies of the world. We're ignoring all of that and just arming so nobody can attack us. Now that sounds pretty good, but if you have the bullies of the world aligning themselves against the U.S., there's going to be a whole lot of them pretty quick, and I'm not so sure we can spend enough government money to arm ourselves to the extent necessary to guard ourselves against the aligned bullies of the world.
For the final question, I want to broaden this out just a little bit. I've had the privilege of being at the CPAC conferences for several years running now, and it's interesting to me. It's a bit eye-opening because my background mostly is with the social conservative movement, pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage, all those things. But when I went to CPAC, I look around and over here are the defense conservatives, and that is their focus. It's what they make little movies and films and show those and all that. Over here you've got the fiscal conservatives, and it's all about smaller government, lower taxes, and fiscal responsibility. We're there, along with some other groups, as social conservatives, talking about the life issue and the marriage issue and all that. And then wandering the halls, you've got a bunch of libertarians who are wearing their pro-marijuana T-shirts and asking for smaller government, but drastically reduced government, just an unbelievably large reduction in government. Is it possible, and I'm not trying to be contrarian here, but do you see a path where all those groups can work at least in harmony enough to accomplish something as a group?
Well, yeah, and that is a good question, and I think so. I think all of us believe that government has grown far too big to be effective, and all of us can see a lot of tightening that ought to be done. But the essential thing that libertarians miss, and I haven't gotten to this yet, and that is the essence of virtue as a requirement for liberty. And George Washington and the rest of the founders were very strong in that. For example, Thomas Jefferson said, the God who gave us life gave us liberty, that liberty comes from God. And there is no reference to God, any deity whatsoever, in the libertarian platform. They just say, we claim that people have certain rights at birth. But if they don't cite a transcendent source for those rights, then those rights don't have very much staying power. And let me just read one more.
Sure.
George Washington, in his first inaugural address as president, the first president said, the foundation of our national public policy will be laid in the pure and immutable, that is unchangeable, pure and immutable principles of private morality. And it was clear where that morality comes from. It comes from biblical principles. The founders quoted biblical sources far and away above any other source as in their papers as they were preparing for the Declaration and the Constitution. So there is a big gulf between social conservatives and libertarians.
But it's important for us to begin having these conversations, to talk about these things, because that's what it's going to take to work together.
It is. We'll have the chairman of the Libertarian Party on that panel. We'll have a senior fellow from Heritage Foundation who has written on these issues, and also a senior fellow from the Cato Institute, which is itself a libertarian organization, but this particular gentleman, Doug Bandow, has written very wonderfully and deeply about the place of biblical principles in government. So it should be a very interesting conversation, and I do believe that CPAC will be carrying this and other events from that conference on its website. So if people can find their way to the CPAC website, they probably will find this panel ready to be viewed.
Yeah, and we'll share a bit of information there right now. September 28th, it's in St. Louis. It is a regional CPAC conference, conservatives of all kinds coming together to talk about what they have in common and what they'd like the future to look like. We'll include a link in the summary of this video to that page so you can register if you like and attend. We'd love to see you there. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
All right, and thank you for watching. We always enjoy hearing from you. You may write to us at mail@citizenlink.com. Send us your questions, your comments, your concerns about what we talk about here. We also encourage you to pray for our nation. Pray that conservative values will begin to find their place back in society again, that people will understand the importance of life and marriage and religious freedom, and will incorporate that into the government systems that we have in this nation so that we can continue to enjoy the freedoms that this country was founded upon. And remember, stand tall and be heard.